Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review, so hopefully you find this one interesting. This movie is an adventure film from Ireland. This is spoken in the Irish local languages, French language and English language, with English subtitles, released in the year 2017, directed by Robert Maldownie, and this film is called Pilgrimage. So Pilgrimage is set in the medieval times in Ireland. You've got this monastery that is inhabited by monks who are doing their everyday word of God, but one day their life is about to change when they're confronted by a guy from Rome. Now this man from Rome says that an ancient relic that belongs to this monastery needs to be transported from Ireland to Rome, and that it's a matter of do or die. So it's a very critical situation, and this is what starts their pilgrimage. So they have to go through some very dangerous areas because there are people out there who want the relic for themselves, but not only do they have to confront the physical dangers, but they also have to deal with the psychological dangers because their faith that binded them together is starting to have a negative effect when they're facing their problems. So it's threatening to corrode their souls and make them danger to themselves. So whether or not this perilous journey can make it to the end is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Pilgrimage. After seeing the trailer, I really wasn't that won over, and I had no real intention of seeing the film. Now, I thought to myself, this looks like a caricature nature of a medieval experience. Now, what I mean by that, you've got a lot of other films where you feel as though it's using the medieval times as a gimmick, is that it has a lot of modernized influences in it, and you really can't get into the situation. And so that's something I don't like about medieval-themed films. I love the medieval times. I'm so interested in it. But a lot of these movies, as I said, when you have a modern influence and modern language in it, I feel as though, okay, I'm not really into this. It doesn't feel like a proper experience. And so a lot of these movies I tend to overlook, but after seeing Pilgrimage, I thought, okay, this looks like a standard fare. But all of that changed, and all the skepticism vanished when I realised that Robert Maldownie was the director. Now, Robert Maldownie, he was responsible for one of the best films I had ever seen, called Savage. That was made in 2013, and that was a movie about an everyday person who had something horrible done to him, and his quest for vengeance that's basically shaping him into a monster. And it basically showed that everyday people are capable of being a monster, and I thought that was a very scary film, capped off by an absolutely phenomenal ending. And so that was a 5-star review, and since then I really hadn't heard too much of Robert Maldownie, and that was a great shame. But when I realised that he was the director of Pilgrimage and that this was his latest film, I basically dropped all the skepticism. I went out, I bought the DVD, and I gave it a shot yesterday, and I will say that I'm so glad I gave it the opportunity, because this is a fantastic experience. It's an experience that is weighed down by a few minor problems, but I will say it does share a lot of similarities with what made Savage so great. Now, as I said, Savage was a movie about a man who had something horrible done to him, and it's showing us that everyday people have the capabilities of being a monster, and that in itself was very scary. And in this movie, it does share that same psychological tension, but the scary nature of this film is the impact of the Word of God, and that how attitudes even today really haven't changed as opposed to medieval times, and that you can use God to hide behind. You can use God to basically hide your insecurities and for the lack of responsibility. And so just following the Word of God blindly and saying that you're doing it in the name of God is something that I think is very scary, and that's what gives religion a really bad sort of element, and that's the destructive side of religion. And I thought that the way that religion was used in this movie was summed up absolutely perfectly in a very brutal way, in that these times were very brutal, is that they could have been killed at any minute, and the violence in this film was absolutely ghastly. There's some very graphic scenes that I thought were very necessary, and so nothing in a Robert Maldownie film is used just to glorify something. It's not used for very cheap shock value. It's used for a very specific reason. I thought the very harsh levels of violence shaped the mentalities of these monks, and it really gave the strong emphasis of that religion, and it pushed it forward even more, is because the faith and the blind faith of God was trying to combat the physical sort of violence, but because they were led blindly by God, they believe that they could do anything, and so they're putting themselves in harm's way. And as I said, it shows the negative side of God. But the beauty of it is that Robert Maldownie doesn't preach that religion is bad. It doesn't preach that religion is good. It basically has a strong level of ambiguity. So there are some scenes where I thought, okay, maybe Robert Maldownie is showing us that God is with them, but there's enough evidence to suggest that God is not with them. And so that basically sums up religion. There's evidence for people who want to see it, and there's evidence for people who actually believe that, God doesn't exist. And so because it's giving you that ambiguity with the religion, I thought it was treating it with a lot of respect. And so that is something that I thought gave it an otherworldly sort of approach, but at the same time keeping it with respects to everyday reality. And so that was very, very good. And so you've got the continuity of the film was absolutely brilliant. Now, the reason why it works so well is because these monks aren't bulletproof. You could feel that they could have been killed at any minute. And as I said, the harsh realities of the violence really showed what they were up against and what would happen if they fell into the wrong hands. And so this transportation of this relic, I thought, was fraught with danger. No normal person would take this journey, but the reason why it works is, as I said, because of that blinding faith that these monks had. But when they start to basically second guess their faith, this is what starts that psychological battleground within the monks, and this is what creates the danger within the monks, because you could feel they could turn on each other at any given moment. And so danger is around every single corner, and that's what really kept me glued to the screen, and that's why the movie works as well as it does, because the director has a lot of attention to the minute details. Now, if you have attention to those minute details, they build up and snowball into something so much bigger, and it just gives you a very accomplished piece. So you've got absolutely breathtaking visuals, the vast landscapes of Ireland, but what really captures you in that medieval moment and the harsh realities of these moments was the fact that it had a very grey palette, and it was basically devoid of any colour. So the movie is not giving you any comfort. The movie is really putting you into the mindset of a person who is actually fraught with danger, who is actually paranoid that something really bad is going to happen. So I thought the cinematography was done very deliberately to get you into that harsh reality that these people were facing, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. So there's some very good action scenes, as I said, very, very violent film, and the end of the film really summed it up once again with the ambiguity. So if you want to believe in God, there's evidence to suggest that he existed in this film, but if you don't believe in God, there's evidence to suggest that these monks were just being led blindly into oblivion. So Robert Maldini has created another film that showcases how versatile this guy can be. Unfortunately, there is a problem I had with the movie, and the problem comes in the villain. Now, the villain, I thought, was very much out of place. I thought that he was a character that belonged into another film, and he belonged in one of those movies that I said before about caricature and about theatrics, about modernising something. I thought that this character was very predictable. I knew what he was going to do. I knew that he couldn't be trusted, and therefore his character was that element of predictability in a film that was unpredictable. So I thought, okay, he wasn't needed. Why was he in this film? And so I just thought, okay, that was the only real glaring problem I had with it, is that he wasn't needed. If he was out of the movie, it would have worked just as well. And so that was something that I thought was a very self-aware film, but that little element wasn't really that self-aware, and it really wasn't needed. And I thought he was there to really compensate for the fact that this movie wasn't that theatrical sort of movie. So that was the problem I had with the movie. There was a little bit of predictability. Apart from the villain, there was a little bit of predictability in the formula, which is something I had a little bit of a problem with. But pushing all that aside, it's a fantastic experience. If you like medieval films and you like the fact that some films out there really pay it with respect, then Pilgrimage is definitely for you. It's coming recommended. I'm going to give it 4 stars. Alright guys, this is for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.